I didn't want to go. I couldn't have felt less like it. But they insisted, Joe and Sally, my best friends. They were determined to get me out of the house. It had been 6 weeks since my split with Dan, a relationship of 5 years. A house, 2 cats, shared friends, a mortgage, all gone in a few hours. It was the common tale. I had come home early from work and found him in bed with my friend. I can still recall the disbelief, followed by the terrible rage, the pounding in my ears, the wild beating of my heart, the desire to destroy him, her, myself. Fortunately, like most people in that situation, I did not attack him or them with a carving knife, wreaking a bloody revenge. But I thought about it, often, and in my dreams. I saw their dismembered bodies lying on the bed, smeared with blood. So what did I do with my murderous rage? I calmly packed my boxes and a suitcase, and I left him with the cats and the mortgage. It was a hurried, knee-jerk reaction. I realised that afterwards. I hadn't got the money to move into anywhere decent. The best lodgings I could afford on my meagre savings was a couple of rooms above a supermarket, access through a lorry bay, past waste bins that stank of rotting meat, up a dark staircase and across a roof. With the arrival of autumn and dark evenings, I ran every step of the way, convinced I was being followed. My flatmates consisted of a handsome young Colombian who smiled a lot, but whose English consisted of hello and good night. A woman who had lank grey hair and crept over her shoulders, who scuttled into her room whenever she saw me, and a couple of love-struck Italians on tour of the world who had decided to stop off in London to earn some money before moving on to South America. My general lowness of spirit, I suppose you would call it grief, was not helped by my surroundings. My bedroom was one of 3 compartments squeezed from a former dining room, shaped like a tunnel. It had a narrow bed, a window that faced onto Kilburn High Street, and with a plasterboard through which I could hear every movement of that Italian couple next door. Although the sound of the traffic was ceaseless, it never quite was enough to smother the sound of them making love. Great. Most nights I lay in bed with my pillow over my head and my fingers in my ears. Deprived of sleep, I drifted through the day like a ghost, drafting letters and contracts for the firm of solicitors for whom I worked in the West End. Lunchtime visits to the shop had lost their charm. I would spend an hour on a park bench, huddled in my coat, although the weather was still warm, trying to read a book while fending off the occasional attention from tramps and tourists. I would nibble at a sandwich, but having no appetite, I would feed most of it to the ducks. Television, cinema, the pub, everything bored me. I let phone calls ring over until the answer phone and never returned the messages. I dropped letters unopened into the bin. All I wanted was oblivion, and on returning from work, I would go straight to bed, hiding under the duvet while seeking the elusive forgetfulness of sleep. Yet, when it came, I dreamt of Dan and his new woman. I relived the horror of my discovery, the pain that felt like a knife through my heart, and the terrible rage and the desire to kill that preceded the vision of their corpses, a scene that always ended up with me looking at a knife held in my bloody hands. Waking suddenly at 3 a.m, I would throw on my coat over my nightdress and wander out over the roof and across the lorry bay into the high street. I would wander for miles, seeking out dark alleyways, cemeteries, half-lit bus stops, tempting fate, wishing for death, but it never came. I became paler and thinner by the day. Unable to bear the light, I took to wearing dark glasses. "Think we're a film star, do we?" quipped the bus conductor. I lifted my glasses and gave him a killer stare. He took one look at my hollow eyes with their dark rings and hurried away to the front of the bus. "Oh my God," chirped Sally and Joe in unison when they saw me. What's happened to you?" Frustrated at having their phone calls and emails ignored, they had turned up at my flat unannounced. "I just don't feel like the company," I shrugged. They exchanged glances and then pushed past me into the kitchen, where I was obliged to make them tea. "We've bought you some food," said Joe, dumping a bulging plastic bag onto the table. "When did you last eat?" "Thanks," I said, evading the question. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing," murmured Jo, her brown eyes focused on me like two searchlights. She stopped mid-sentence. Jorge, my Colombian neighbour, slipped into the kitchen. Despite the onset of cold weather and the flat's inadequate heating, he was dressed for summer, his vest revealing a bronzed and muscular torso. For a few minutes, Jo and Sally forgot their concern about me and followed him around the room with their eyes. "Good night," said Jorge, having helped himself to a glass of milk. "Good night," chorused the girls. "Wow," said Sally. "He's gorgeous. Why don't you—" "I'm not interested," I said, yawning. "Okay, well, we are going to make you interested in this, even if it kills you. We're fed up with your moping, so we're going to take you out." But I began. "No excuses. You're coming out with us now." I sighed. There was no getting out of it. I reasoned that the sooner I went with them, the sooner I could get home to bed. I went to my room and flung on the first dress I could find. "Oh, great," said Sally, unimpressed. "Black." She jerked suddenly as Jo kicked her underneath the table. Actually, it's quite appropriate," said Jo cheerily. "It's a Halloween party and you're coming." I followed them obediently to the car and sat wearily in the back seat, watching the street lights as they flashed past as Jo threaded her way through the London traffic. I must have fallen asleep because when we arrived, the sky and the surroundings were the darkest pitch. I could hardly see my own feet as we stumbled up the driveway to the hotel that had once been a Georgian mansion. Partygoers in masks and witches' hats were streaming up the steps, and having joined the crush, we were all but carried through the doors. Having been plied with several drinks at the bar, Jo and Sally steered me up an elegant curved staircase to the ballroom, where strobe lighting flashed eerily on dancers' gyrating bodies and upturned faces. I shuffled about, drink in hand, until Sally and Jo had found themselves partners. I turned, hoping to make an escape, only to find my way blocked by a young man, tall and athletic, with a mop of chestnut hair and a handsome pale face. "Hi, I'm Tom. Do you want to dance?" he said. "Yes," I answered despite myself. It was a slow dance, and as I sank into his arms, I felt myself coming back to life, called back from a dark wasteland to a place of warmth and vitality. For the first time in my life, I felt as if I was in the right place with the right person. "Strange," I said. "It's like we've met before?" He finished my sentence. "Yeah." "Funny," he mused. "I feel the same, as if I've been waiting for something all my life and now it's happened. It's what the French would call un coup de foudre." "A what?" "Un coup de foudre. A bolt of lightning. It's what people feel when they make an instant connection, when they—" He hesitated. "Fall in love?" It was my turn to finish his sentence. "Yes," he said. "That's what I meant to say." "And do you think that's what's happening to us?" "Don't you?" "Yes," I replied empathetically. Yes, I do." Visions of the future flashed through my mind. Marriage to Tom, a house in the country, 2 beautiful children. The darkness that invaded my life began to lift. The lurid thoughts of revenge and cruelty that had haunted me melted away, and I was whole and I was happy. Until this moment, my life had been so torturous, so difficult, yet now it felt easy, as if it had slotted into some predetermined groove and I was rolling forward on well-oiled casters. The change was breathtaking, like a fairy tale, a transformation brought about by a flourish of a magic wand. Was this really happening to me? We danced every dance together, an island of peace in the middle of whirling chaos of sound and colour, our rhythm never changing despite the tempo of the band. We talked and talked, unperturbed by the insistent beat of the music, every word and every phrase resonating within us, as if it had been rehearsed many times. "Have you ever been hurt? I mean, really badly?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "My boyfriend cheated." My girlfriend cheated too. She'd disappear for weeks, and every time I forgave her, until I finally snapped, and we'd arranged to meet. I waited for hours, but she never turned up. I knew it was starting all over again, and I couldn't bear it. I think I went a bit crazy. It's a terrible feeling. I know, I said, remembering my tormented dreams. You'd never let me down, would you? He stared into my eyes with a strange urgency. No, never. I'll always be there for you, I replied. I'll never leave you, not for 1 minute. He smiled, holding me to him, my head on his shoulder as he gently stroked my hair. As we swayed to the music, I knew that as long as we were together, everything would be all right. When the band took a break, we stepped out onto the balcony where, with arms entwined, we kissed. Time fell away and we danced again and we kissed again. At 5 minutes to midnight, he pushed me away gently. I'll take you home, he said. I'm just going to go and get my bike. Wait for me. I walked slowly down the sweeping staircase, while other guests were also beginning to leave, flowing out of the ballroom, some talking in loud, excited voices, others lurching down the stairs, clutching unsteadily at the banisters. The foyer was awash with people, some heading for the bar for one last drink, others queuing for coats and bags. I struggled to get to the door, but I couldn't quite penetrate the crush. It seemed to take hours to travel just a few feet. I began to panic. He would think I wasn't coming and that I'd abandoned him. Using my elbows, I pushed and I jostled my way through the crowd, but the tide was too strong and kept forcing me back from the door. I tried to shout, "Excuse me!" but my voice was lost in the hubbub. All I could hear was this tiny mouse-like squeak from me. After what felt like hours, I emerged at the top of the steps. I wanted to call out, tell him I was still there, that I had waited for him. Then, in the distance, I heard the roar of a motorbike. It appeared from the darkness, travelling at high speed, its rider crouched underneath from over the handlebars. For a second, I caught a glimpse of his face, furious and contorted with anger. I ran down the steps and along the drive, trying to catch up, shouting, "Stop, stop!" But all I could see was the red eye of the tail light growing smaller and smaller until finally it winked shut. Desolate, I stood in the drive, staring into the night. "Hey, what are you doing out here?" Sally and Joe appeared beside me. "Where have you been?" they demanded. "We've been looking for you everywhere." "I met this terrific man. Didn't you see us?" They shook their heads. "He asked me to wait for him, but I couldn't get out in time and he's gone off without me." "Ah, the bastard," Joe exclaimed, putting her arms around me. I whimpered into her coat as the whisperings of hatred and revenge crept back, sleek and soft, enfolding me in their murderous darkness. "Oh, don't worry," said Sally. "We've spent the evening with a couple of deadbeats. All they could talk about was football and their boring jobs." Joe patted my back. "Better luck next time." "Yeah," said Sally. "You win some, you lose some." "Hey," she said, looking down at my feet. "What are you doing out here with only one shoe on, you daft cow?" I was suddenly aware of the cold, wet gravel under my one foot. "Listen, you go back in and get it and we'll fetch the car. We'll wait at the bottom of the steps." I limped back into the hotel and up to the bar. "Has anyone found a shoe?" I asked. The barman gave me that old-fashioned look, the one he saved for the girls who were drunk too much. Try lost property. As he bent over to pick up a glass, I saw a photograph on the shelf behind him. Who's that?" I demanded, pointing at the picture. Eyes narrowed, the barman looked at me warily. "That's Tom, son of the hotel owner. He was studying French at Leicester, went to a party about this time last year. Girlfriend stood him up, not for the first time apparently. Anyway, he had a big motorbike, a Triumph Bonneville, a present from his dad. No one knows what happened exactly. He left the party on his bike, probably went too fast, hit a tree, killed instantly." The barman paused to wipe a glass. "Know him, did you?" Just a bit," I whispered. "A sad end," mused the barman. "Broken heart and all that." "That's where you're wrong," I murmured. "It hasn't ended."